Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and in this episode, I want to kind of do a reflection, a self-reflection, right? Now, I'm going to kind of prompt it, but you essentially afterwards really got to do the inner work of all of this. And what I want to talk about today is ways of becoming more independent. So less dependent on other people and, certainly our government and so forth. So let me give some context. I was talking with my friend Khalil, and he was talking about how the coronavirus essentially made him rethink of how he needs to have more streams of income, because now certainly a lot of people in America and the world, I imagine, have been cut off from the normal way that they make money. And it's like they've been put in a bind. So it's like, how do you provide for your family when the normal streams of revenue are not there? You have to think of new ways, right? So, the people that had multiple sources of revenue were in a far better position to weather this storm than before. Now, finances aren't the only way, but I think it's a good way to kind of think about this. Certainly, one of the ways that I've been thinking about it is, what can I, what are the things that I can control? And so I've taken up gardening. Because for me, it allows me to produce some of my own food, thereby cutting down, cost of vegetables. The other component of it being that it allows me to eat healthier, right? And so by eating healthier, I have better health, and that can avoid me potentially, right? I can't necessarily guarantee this, but potentially a lot of medical costs down the line. Also, it wastes less food in the sense that, like, if I want a tomato, I can just pick one tomato versus buying a whole bunch from the grocery store and then kind of seeing some of them rot and so forth, right? I can kind of pick as I need them, type of thing. So, I look at gardening in that sense. And I think whatever ways you can kind of become less dependent on others, I think is a good way to go about it. I know, from the American perspective, certainly in the political realm, we talk a lot about that there's too much of dependency on other countries. And I agree with this, right? I think we as a country need to become dependent more on ourselves. But I think it only works if you start with yourself as an individual. What are the things that you are doing on an individual level that make you less, dependent on other people? Now, of course, we're always interconnected. We can't escape that. But there are certainly small steps that we can take. Like, the way in which we need people is different than I think we imagine. We can certainly grow a majority of our food just by gardening. And by the way, this applies for even if you live in an urban environment, in an apartment like New York City. You can grow enough of your own food. I did a series called Garden Girl TV when I was in college, and I learned about it. And the whole premise of the show was urban sustainable living, right? Meaning, again, you can live in New York and still grow enough of your own food. So the idea is okay, you might not be able to fully become just this solo, independent, don't need anybody else type of person. That's not necessarily a goal, but enough where you can survive on your own, and where you do need people, you need them for actual human relationships, not these other things of food, finances, and so forth, right? So I encourage you right here, right now, to really explore what are the steps that you can take to become more independent in your life. And that's a big thing. Going back to the kind of gardening thing, I think a lot of people, we always look at I need to make more money, I need to make more money. What we don't look at is the flip side of it, is saving money. Because if you can save money and you can cut out a lot of expenses, well, then you don't need to make as much money. One of the ways that I've been kind of thinking about it, and the only reason why I haven't really pulled this trigger at all, is because I have 2 dogs, and I want to essentially provide for them in terms of the space and so forth. But if it wasn't for them, I would consider living in a van, a converted van, that has a bed and a mini kitchen and so forth. Like, how much space ultimately do we need? We don't need a lot. And so, I think part of, the silver lining of all of this is we can, in terms of coronaviruses, we can examine, our own lives and be like, okay, what is the thing that we truly need versus what like has always been our wants? There's a great episode of South Park called Margaritaville, and this was kind of parodying the 2008 crash, where we just spent so aimlessly on the things that we didn't need in life, like in the episode of South Park, these margarita machines, like anything that like quote unquote could enhance our lives, we got. And minimalism I think gets a kind of twisted notion of what it truly means, but I think it's not to say like you have to be a monk, but it's essentially cutting out things that you don't need in your life. I think too many of us buy needless shit in our lives that doesn't really ultimately benefit us. And if we can cut out a lot of those expenses, well, then you don't need to make as much money. But conversely, I think a lot of us need to also examine on having multiple streams of income, whether that's through investments, having perhaps side gigs and whatever else, right? There's a number of ways to kind of look at this so that you're not susceptible because, as unpredictable as like coronavirus for all intents and purposes was, it's not the only thing in human history that has come at us unexpectedly. And so we need to, there are ways to prepare for situations like this, worst case scenario, to weather the storm. And, the more you think about how you can be independent, the more you can start to weather that storm a lot better. Anyway, that's what I have for you today. It's more of an exercise rather than just a tell-all, if you will, but I really strongly encourage you to really sit with this idea, to take out a piece of paper, take out a whole notebook, whatever it may be, and really think about what are the things in your life that you can do to be less dependent and more independent. And I would encourage you to comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek with all those things, because I certainly would love to see them, and I know a lot of people would benefit if you do so. As I said, for me, gardening is like the thing that like right now is like the main thing that I'm doing that is really beneficial and allowing me to become more independent. But there's hundreds of other ideas as well that I certainly can't think of. I'm as smart as I am, I can't think of everything. And so we as a community can come together and I think really create an amazing playbook if we all just participate. So I strongly encourage you to do so. And also likewise, maybe you have some questions. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. Ask a question. The question might lead to something breakthrough. So by all means, don't hesitate to ask as well. Again, comment down below or hit me up on social media at Svitek. I also encourage you to share this with anybody in your life that may benefit from this. And lastly, if you appreciate this lesson but aren't subscribed, aren't following, I encourage you to do so. That way you get all the various lessons that I put out when I put them out. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to tune in. I hope to see you next time.